morning sun broke through my window, soft and golden, spilling across the neatly folded wedding dress that had been hanging there for weeks. I remember standing there, holding it in my hands and feeling this strange mix of excitement and nerves. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, the day I would walk down the aisle toward the person I loved, surrounded by family and friends, all smiling, all celebrating. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. I had imagined the laughter, the music, the smell of flowers, and the sparkle in everyone's eyes. But deep down, there was a whisper I couldn't ignore. A tiny voice in the back of my mind telling me, "Not everyone is happy for you." I didn't want to think about it. Not today, not now. I brushed my fingers over the delicate lace, tracing the patterns like I was trying to hold on to my own calm. The excitement bubbled inside me, but so did a quiet, almost unrecognizable tension. Something felt off. It started small. The first strange text came early in the morning from someone I trusted. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" It read. Nothing threatening, just strange, polite, but edged with doubt. I shoved my phone into my pocket, telling myself it was nothing, just nerves playing tricks on me. By the time I reached the venue, a beautiful old hall that smelled faintly of roses and polished wood, I tried to shake it off completely. The chairs were lined up perfectly, petals scattered across the aisle like a soft, fragrant carpet. Everything looked like a dream, and for a brief moment I almost believed it was. Almost. Then I saw them. Not one person, but two, standing near the entrance with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. My stomach dropped. These were people who should have been on my side. People I had trusted. Family, people I loved, who suddenly felt different. Their eyes darted toward me, and I caught the flicker of something I didn't like at all. Anticipation. Not joy, but something else. I swallowed hard and kept walking. I told myself I wasn't paranoid. Maybe it was just nerves. Maybe I was reading too much into their expressions. But the unease grew, crawling under my skin. Cold and insistent. As the ceremony started, I tried to focus on the person waiting at the altar, the one who had promised to love me, the one who made all the struggles and sacrifices feel worthwhile. But every smile I offered was mirrored by a shadow behind me, a whisper behind a laugh. My heart raced, not with joy, but with suspicion, and then it happened. A small, almost insignificant slip that would have gone unnoticed by anyone else, but not by me. A subtle comment from one of the guests, a quiet smirk, a side glance. It was enough. Enough to shatter that fragile sense of perfection I had been holding on to. I realized in that moment that this day, the day I had dreamed of, planned for, and imagined countless times, was being targeted. Not just ruined by circumstance, not by accident, but by someone who wanted to see me falter, and yet I stayed quiet. I smiled. I walked down the aisle, each step measured, deliberate, while my mind raced in a way no one could see. Because I knew something they didn't. I knew that the people who think they can destroy someone's happiness rarely see the person in front of them calmly, patiently, waiting. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't confront anyone. I simply kept moving forward, holding my head high, because I was already planning my perfect response. The day was theirs to try to ruin, but the night would be mine. The ceremony went on, each word spoken in a blur, each smile I offered carefully measured. Everyone applauded, everyone laughed, but behind the laughter, I felt the weight of unseen eyes. Whispers traveled like smoke, curling into corners I didn't expect, twisting moments that should have been pure with a tension I couldn't ignore. It wasn't overt, nothing that could be confronted head-on. Just a carefully chosen word here, a side glance there, small jabs disguised as jokes. A cousin leaning too close and saying, "Hope you're ready for what comes next," with a tone that felt more like a threat than concern. Or a friend I had grown up with, laughing at something insignificant. But their eyes flicked toward me and held a gleam that was hard to read. Everywhere I looked, it felt like shadows were gathering. And yet the people around me, my partner, my closest friends, didn't see it. They were wrapped up in their own joy, in their own celebration, oblivious to the tiny cracks forming in the perfection of the day. I started noticing patterns, the kind only someone patient and observant could detect. Someone had been trying to isolate me, to plant doubts in others' minds. A subtle comment to my partner about how nervous I seemed, a quiet suggestion that maybe I wasn't ready. Invitations not sent to certain relatives, Seating arrangements subtly shifted to make me look awkward, whispers designed to make others question me, and it hit me. The betrayal wasn't just about ruining a moment. It was personal, deeply personal. Someone wanted to see me falter in front of the people I loved, to strip away not just the ceremony, but my dignity, my joy, my confidence. And I knew exactly who it was, but instead of confronting them, I stayed silent. I smiled when they smiled, nodded when they spoke, and let every attempt at manipulation wash over me like water off stone. They were proud of their small victories, thinking I hadn't noticed, thinking I was powerless. I spent the rest of the day observing. I memorized their patterns, the way their voices changed when they thought no one was listening, the way their hands trembled ever so slightly when they tried to control a situation. I listened to every rumor, every carefully planted seed of doubt. Each one became a thread in the tapestry I was quietly weaving, a tapestry that would one day expose them fully. And yet there was a strange beauty in this moment. For all the tension, all the whispers, I felt a sense of control I had never known. I wasn't reacting. I wasn't panicking. I wasn't letting them see they had power over me. I was waiting, patiently, methodically, calmly. It's amazing what people reveal when they believe no one is paying attention. They spoke freely, thinking their plans were invisible. They underestimated the power of silence, the weight of observation. And in that underestimation lay their undoing. By the time the reception began, I had cataloged every small act, every half-smile, every whispered word. I knew who was trying to push my buttons, who wanted to embarrass me, who wanted to take joy in my moment and twist it into discomfort. And I knew that patience would be my weapon, because the truth about betrayal is this: the best revenge isn't loud. It isn't immediate. It isn't the reaction people expect. The best revenge is quiet. The best revenge is invisible until the perfect moment arrives, when all eyes are on you, and no one expects it. As I raised my glass that evening, smiling for the cameras, I let my eyes flick toward the guilty parties. I let them think they had won, and all the while I carried a secret inside me, a plan forming like lightning behind calm skies. They didn't know it yet, but the shadows that had been following me, whispering doubts, manipulating moments, they were about to be illuminated. Every hidden intention, every quiet scheme, every malicious smile, they would all be exposed, and it would be perfect. And in that moment, I realized, sometimes the calmest face holds the sharpest mind. The quietest person carries the heaviest storm, and I was ready for mine. After the reception, when the laughter had faded and the hall was emptying, I found a quiet corner to think. The music still hummed faintly in the background, and the scent of flowers lingered in the air. Everyone was distracted, carried away by the celebration, but I was focused. Focused on the pieces, the people, the patterns. I realized then that this was not a moment for anger, nor for confrontation. Anger would make me reckless. Confrontation would reveal my hand too early. No, the moment for action would come later, carefully, deliberately, when it could not be ignored. My mind started working like a machine, each thought methodically cataloged, each plan layered over the next. The people who had tried to undermine me had left trails, subtle, faint but unmistakable for someone paying attention. A misplaced note, a whispered conversation, a gesture caught just out of the corner of my eye. I had been taking notes in my mind all day, filing every interaction, every smirk, every act of manipulation. Every small betrayal was a puzzle piece, and now, finally, the puzzle was taking shape. I began crafting the plan in secret. Not loud, not obvious, but precise. Every move had to be calculated, timed to perfection. I could feel the satisfaction of control, knowing that while they thought they had power, the truth was that I had been one step ahead all along. I enlisted subtle allies without them knowing it. People who had also noticed the strange behaviors, the whispers, the manipulation. They didn't need to know my full plan. Their support was simple, quietly confirming suspicions, providing small insights that could be woven into the larger tapestry. It was almost poetic how easily they became threads in the story I was about to unfold. The key, I realized, was patience. I had to wait for the perfect moment, the moment when all eyes were on them, the moment when their confidence was at its peak and their guard was down. That moment, I knew, would come when they least expected it, when they believed their plan was succeeding and that I was none the wiser. I spent the next few days carefully positioning myself. Social media posts, casual conversations, gentle nudges, they all served a purpose. I allowed myself to be seen as oblivious, even joyful, letting them believe their sabotage had left no mark. They reveled in their imagined victory, and that hubris, that confidence, was exactly what I needed. At night, when the house was quiet and the world seemed asleep, I would go over the plan in my mind again and again. I visualized every reaction, every gasp, every stunned silence. I imagined the moment when the truth would hit them like a wave, when the whispers would dry up, and their smirks would be replaced with disbelief. I realized, in those quiet hours, that revenge wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about reclaiming control, about asserting that no one had the power to diminish your joy when you refused to let them. It was about turning patience into strength, calm into action, silence into a weapon sharper than any words or accusations. And then, one evening, as I reviewed the final details, it all fell into place. I had identified the exact moment, the perfect scenario, the perfect audience. I would let them believe they were in control until it was too late. And when the moment came, it would be flawless. Because the truth about betrayal is this: those who think they can destroy you rarely realize that you are watching, learning, waiting. And sometimes the person who seems the quietest, the one who doesn't react, is the one with the most power. I smiled to myself, letting the thought settle like fire in my chest. They had no idea that every step they had taken to sabotage my happiness had been cataloged, stored, and carefully woven into the plan that would leave them exposed. And I knew, deep down, that when the moment came, it wouldn't just be satisfying, it would be unforgettable. The stage was set. The pieces were in place. And now I waited. Not impatiently, not nervously, but with a calm certainty that comes from knowing you are ready. They had underestimated me, and that was their greatest mistake. Because soon, very soon, the quiet, patient observer they had ignored would become the center of attention. And when that happened, everything they had tried to ruin would crumble in front of their eyes. And in that perfect silence, I would rise. The day arrived quiet at first, with the soft hum of activity in the background. I woke with a strange calm, a sense that everything was about to shift. Outside, the sun poured through the curtains, and birds chirped as though nothing in the world could go wrong. But I knew better. Today, all the subtle betrayals, all the whispered schemes, all the carefully hidden plans, they were about to collide with the truth. I stepped into the room where the final preparations were being made. Guests were arriving, conversations bubbling, laughter filling the air. Everyone seemed blissfully unaware that the calm I carried was dangerous, that it carried the weight of observation, patience, and careful calculation. And then it began. The first subtle attack came in the form of a misplaced announcement, something that should have been trivial. A tiny shift meant to create confusion and embarrassment. But I was ready. I moved with ease, intercepting questions, redirecting attention, keeping the chaos from reaching anyone who mattered. The would-be saboteurs blinked, momentarily unsettled. Their confidence wavered just enough to hint that perhaps I was not as oblivious as they had thought. Throughout the day, they tried again. A poorly timed comment here, a question designed to make me hesitate there. But each attempt only added fuel to the fire I had been nurturing quietly inside me. Each move they made was catalogued, remembered, folded into the strategy I had carefully crafted. They thought they were in control, but in truth, they were walking right into the perfect trap. By midday, the tension had begun to thicken. Subtle glances were exchanged, smiles became strained, laughter slightly forced. The energy in the room shifted, though no one could yet say why. And I continued to move among the people, calm, composed, smiling when necessary, nodding politely, letting them think they had succeeded in their manipulation. It was during the ceremony's formalities that the first cracks truly appeared. A question meant to undermine me was deflected effortlessly, exposing the lack of foundation behind their schemes. Gasps rippled through the audience as it became clear that their carefully built web of whispers and doubts was unraveling before their eyes. I watched as disbelief replaced arrogance, and shock replaced smugness. The subtle chaos they had tried to orchestrate had turned against them. Every tiny act of betrayal, every whisper, every attempt to manipulate, was now a mirror reflecting their intentions back onto them. And as I stood there, calm and composed, I realized the power of patience, the strength of observation, and the beauty of executing a plan with precision. By the afternoon, the tension was almost palpable. Their confidence had evaporated, replaced by nervous glances and whispered concerns. I could see the panic beginning to take root, though no one yet understood why. The pieces were aligning, the moment approaching, the moment when their schemes would be fully exposed and their arrogance laid bare. And then came the perfect moment. A simple, seemingly insignificant action. A question, a statement. A revelation was all that was needed to tip the scales. They had laid everything bare, thinking their subtle manipulations would go unnoticed. I stepped forward, quiet, calm, composed, and allowed the moment to unfold naturally. No shouting, no drama, no confrontation, just the silent force of truth meeting deception. Eyes widened. Smiles faltered. The whispered schemes, the carefully hidden motives, the subtle betrayals, they were all exposed, clear as day. The very people who had tried to ruin my happiness were left speechless, their confidence shattered, their plans defeated without a single word of anger from me. The room fell into a stunned silence. All eyes turned, not to me in judgment, but toward the undeniable truth of what had been hidden. And in that silence, I felt a surge of quiet satisfaction, not vengeance, not malice, but justice, because in that moment, I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always need to be loud or destructive. Sometimes it's simply about being patient, being smart, and allowing the truth to shine through when the time is right. And today, the truth had spoken louder than any argument, any confrontation, any attempt at sabotage ever could. I smiled, and in that smile, I carried not triumph alone, but a lesson. Patience is power. Observation is strength. Calm is control. And when betrayal comes knocking, the quiet, deliberate response often leaves the most unforgettable impact. It all came together in a way that felt almost cinematic, as if the universe itself had paused to witness it. The room, still buzzing with half-formed conversations, suddenly grew quiet as the subtle tension I had been cultivating for days reached its peak. Every whispered plan, every hidden agenda, every act of manipulation, their consequences were about to unfold in full view. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of patience I had carried so carefully, the stillness that had masked the storm inside me. This was the moment I had waited for, the moment when silence became my ally, observation became my weapon, and the truth became unstoppable. It began with a single, seemingly innocuous comment. Someone, confident in their manipulation, tried one last attempt to unsettle me, a question disguised as concern, a nudge meant to embarrass. I didn't flinch. I didn't react. I simply smiled, calm, poised, the calm eye in the storm they had created. And then I spoke. Not loudly, not harshly, but clearly, deliberately, with the kind of quiet authority that leaves no room for doubt. I revealed the smallest threads first. The missteps, the whispers, the subtle attempts to undermine me. Each revelation was precise, undeniable, leaving no space for excuses. Gasps rippled through the room. Some tried to laugh it off, but their smiles faltered under the weight of undeniable truth. Then I let the next layer fall. The evidence of the sabotage, the proof of manipulation, the careful chain of events that exposed the betrayal, it was all there. Faces turned pale, eyes widened, voices caught in throats. Those who had tried to destroy my day were now left speechless, their plans crumbling like sand slipping through their fingers. And the best part? No one could argue with the calmness in my voice, the certainty in my presence. I didn't need to shout or accuse. The truth spoke for itself. Every hidden intention, every calculated act of betrayal, every malicious smirk, they were all laid bare, undeniable. In front of everyone who mattered, I watched them scramble, trying to recover, trying to twist the narrative, but it was too late. The moment I had waited for, the moment I had planned, observed, and executed with patience, had arrived. And in their stunned silence, I felt a wave of quiet triumph wash over me. Not anger, not revenge for revenge's sake, but satisfaction, the pure, unshakable satisfaction of justice finally revealed. Guests whispered among themselves, eyes darting between the guilty parties and me. Some offered sympathetic smiles, others nods of respect. I stood there, calm and composed, as the people who had tried to manipulate and undermine me realized that their arrogance had been their undoing. And in that room, filled with astonishment and quiet murmurs, I finally allowed myself to exhale. Because in that moment, I realized something profound. Power isn't always loud. Justice doesn't always need confrontation. And revenge, the kind that leaves a mark not on the body but on the conscience, is often the quietest, most calculated, and most unforgettable. I looked around, meeting the eyes of those who mattered most, my partner, my friends, the people whose support had been steady and unwavering. And I saw relief, pride, and joy mirrored back at me. My day, my happiness, my dignity, they had all survived stronger than ever because I had stayed calm, strategic, and patient. And as the evening progressed, the tension dissolved into laughter, music, and celebration once more. The shadows that had haunted the day were gone, replaced by clarity and light. And in the quiet moments, I reflected on what had happened and what it had taught me. Patience is strength, observation is power, and the calm mind can turn betrayal into an unforgettable triumph. Because the perfect moment isn't always obvious. Sometimes it's hidden behind whispers, behind shadows, behind the quiet patience of someone who refuses to be destroyed. And when that moment comes, it leaves no doubt. Justice, true and lasting, has arrived. The chaos of the day had passed. The echoes of whispers, the tension, the carefully hidden schemes, they had all been resolved, exposed, and finally neutralized. The hall, once heavy with the weight of subtle betrayal, now felt lighter, brighter, alive with laughter, conversation, and relief. People moved through the space with ease, no longer guarded, no longer caught in the invisible tension that had hovered like a storm cloud over the celebration. I stood for a moment, quietly observing. The people who had tried to manipulate me were still there, but their arrogance had evaporated, replaced by an almost sheepish humility. Some avoided my eyes, unsure how to recover from the undeniable truth they had been forced to confront. Others offered apologies tentative and awkward, a pale echo of remorse that came too late to undo their actions, but enough to show they had finally realized the cost of underestimating me. I allowed myself a quiet smile. Not a triumphant, gloating smile, but one of calm satisfaction. Victory isn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about watching patience and strategy turn the tables, letting truth and justice speak louder than anger ever could. And in that quiet satisfaction, I felt a deep sense of peace. Looking around, I saw the faces of those who mattered most. My partner, my friends, my family who had supported me through it all. Their smiles, their laughter, their relief, they were the real victory. The people who tried to cast shadows over my happiness had failed, not because of luck, but because I refused to let them control my emotions, my day, or my life. It was a lesson that ran deeper than this one day. Betrayal is painful, yes, but it is also revealing. It shows who people truly are, what they value, and how far they will go to satisfy their own selfish desires. And revenge, when it is executed with thought. Patience and integrity is not about cruelty, it is about justice, about reclaiming what was rightfully yours, and showing that attempts to harm you will not succeed when you remain strong and focused. As the evening settled, and the last guests began to leave, I felt a quiet sense of closure. The day had been perfect, not because nothing had gone wrong, but because I had turned every challenge, every betrayal into an opportunity to rise above. I had transformed whispers into proof, manipulation into exposure, and tension into triumph. And in that moment, I understood the most important truth. Life will often test you. People will try to undermine you, twist your happiness, and steal your joy. But it is in your calmness, your patience, and your ability to wait for the perfect moment that true strength is revealed. Revenge, when necessary, need not be loud or destructive. It can be subtle, deliberate, and profoundly satisfying. I took a deep breath, letting the weight of the day settle. The sun had set, casting a warm glow over the world outside, and I realized that, in a way, this day had taught me more than any lesson I could have imagined. Not just about betrayal and revenge, but about patience, self-control, and the quiet power of observation. And as I walked away from the celebration, hand in hand with the person I loved, I carried with me a truth I would never forget. Those who try to destroy you often reveal themselves completely. But it is your response, the calm, calculated, patient response, that shapes the story that will be told. And sometimes that story ends not with anger or regret, but with quiet, undeniable triumph. Because the perfect moment, when it comes, is not always obvious. It is measured, it is patient, it is deliberate. And when you recognize it, it leaves a mark far deeper than any act of revenge could ever hope to leave. It leaves justice, clarity, and a sense of peace that no betrayal can ever take away.